Welcome back. In this video we will write a program to swap value of two numbers. So first let's understand how the code will work and then we will write the actual code. So let's understand the procedure to swap two numbers. First of all, we will take two numbers as input from user. So take two numbers as input from user. So the variable will be named as number1 and number2. Assume the user has input number1 as 5 and number2 as 8. We will have one more variable named as temp. So one more variable of type integer named as temp. Now the temp will not have any value, so temp is undefined. The value of temp doesn't exist. The variable temp has no values, so temp is undefined. Now we will store temp as number1, which is 5. We are assigning number1 to the variable temp, so value of temp will become 5. Now we will assign number2 to number1, so we will assign number2 to number1, so number1 will become 8, and then we will assign temp to number2, so we will assign temp to number2, so it will become 5. So after doing this, the value of number1 is, you can see we have assigned number1 as 8, so it will become 8 and number2 will become 5 from the line number 19. So initially the number1 is 5 and number2 is 8. Now the number1 is 8 and number2 is 5. So this is how the procedure to swap two number works. Let me explain you once more. We have taken two numbers from the user. Assuming the user have inputted two number as 5 and 8, we have one more extra variable called temp, which is used for performing the swapping of these numbers. So we will assign temp as number1, so value of temp will become 5. Now we will assign number2 to number1, so number1 will become 8, and now we will assign the variable temp to number2, so it will become 5, and then we will print number1 and number2. So let's write the code. Hash include stdio.h int man. We will have 2 or 3 variables, so int number1 comma number2 comma temp. We will have 3 variables. We will print a message for the user to input two numbers. Please enter two numbers. So user will have to take two inputs, so scanf %d, and we will take number1 as input and then %d number2. Let's now print this value. So we haven't performed swapping, so we will write a message printf value before swapping, and let's have a next line for we will print the numbers in the next line. So print, that's why I have written /n here, printf %d, and let's write here number 1 which is equals to percentage d, and the number 1 will be written here. Then print f number 2 which is equals to percentage d, and the variable is number 2. Let's put /n so that we will see the output in the more good, better way. So number 1 is 5 and number 1 is 8, number 2 is 8. So values before swapping, number 1 is 5 and number 2 is 8. Now let's swap the content of number 1 and number 2. So writing the logic we have discussed, temp is equals to number 1, so temp will hold, number 1 is 5, so temp will hold number 1, so temp become 5. Now number 1 is equals to number 2, so number 2 is 8 and we have assigned 8 to number 1, so number 1 will become 8. Then number 2 is equals to temp, and we will print the result after doing the swapping. Values after swapping, and let's run the code. So please enter to number 5 8. So values before swapping, number 1 is 5 and number 2 is 8. Value after swapping, number 1 is 8 and number 2 is 5. Let's run this code once more with other input 8 and 10. So values will become number 1 is 8 and number 2 is 10, and number 1 is 10 and number 2 is 8. So that's it in this video. We will write some more code in the next video.